Now, some people say they've had bad experiences with nuns in school, but tonight we'll look to have a great experience with these nuns who will be teaching us all, so please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And our guests come from different places, but they're certainly no strangers to the network. In fact, many of your children will probably recognize them from their popular series, Truth in the Heart. They are from the Dominican Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist. So please welcome Sister Amada Veritas, Sister Teresa Benedicta, and Sister Mary Joseph. Sisters, welcome.
Thank you, Father.
Good to have you back.
It's great to be back. It is great to be back.
Now, y'all are working pretty hard here, teaching away on a new series of programs. So what are you teaching, Sister?
Well, this year I'm trying to do third grade for Truth in the Heart, and my topic for the year is the Our Father. So I'm doing a number of shows on the Our Father.
Okay. Sister?
And this year I'm doing a series on pilgrimages, and there's some world pilgrimages in the United States, pilgrimages that you might make in your local area.
Okay. And Sister, what are you teaching?
I'm actually teaching about the 4 seasonal antiphons of Our Lady that was traditionally done, or is still traditionally done throughout the liturgical seasons.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, before we even get into those topics, where are you teaching now, Sister?
I was teaching in South Carolina, in Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Oh, well.
I'm at the Mother House. I teach the postulants.
Okay. A tough group to straighten out.
Tough group, yes.
And I've been in Ave Maria, Florida, teaching in a high school.
Great, great. So let's start off with, Sister, with what you're teaching. Are you teaching the same thing in Ave Maria, or is this just for the TV series?
Well, you teach what you love.
Yeah.
So I teach it differently, obviously, to high schoolers than I would teach to the TV series is geared toward third grade. But I think wherever you go, you're trying to give your students a love for the faith and the prayers that our Lord taught us, the prayers that have always been at the heart of the church. So yes, I'm teaching it very differently than I would in a classroom of high school students, but I'm still trying to communicate that same love for the prayers that have always been part of the church.
Now, in terms of this, you're teaching the Our Father. Do you think they don't know it yet, or why are you teaching the Our Father?
I think because, we hear prayer so often, it's very easy for us to forget the power and what they mean. Mm-hmm. This 2 weeks ago, actually, I was visiting a friend I have who's in prison, and he had just gone to confession to the bishop, and I was speaking to him the day afterwards, and he was just beaming, and he said, "Sister, it was the strangest thing, because the bishop, after hearing my life's confession, told me to pray one Our Father." And I thought, one Our Father? That's it? You've heard my life confession, and you want to give me one Our Father? And the bishop said, "Pray."
Now don't project, Sister.
Yeah. So, but the bishop told him, pray it as if you've never prayed it before. Take your time and really think about, what do these words mean? Yeah. And he said, "Sister, it took me 3 hours to pray that one Our Father, because it suddenly hit me the power of those prayers." And I think, we say the prayers over and over again, but sometimes we need to stop and think, wow, God's our Father. He's letting us call him Father, and who does that make us? So taking the time to think about those prayers and to make the words that we say all the time suddenly come alive, and to look at it from all different aspects is so important.
And so normally people divide the Lord's Prayer into 7 petitions. Do you do the same?
I only have 4 shows that I'm doing, so I divide it into 4 parts, even though that's the traditional way, into 7 petitions. But I ended up, for this series, doing it into 4 different sections.
Okay, all right, yeah. Someone who can adapt.
Yes.
I love it. Sister, what are you teaching?
I taught, I'm teaching 4 episodes on pilgrimages, and it starts off with just the idea that we're all pilgrims.
Well, first of all, what is I mean, are these people going to be eating turkey every day, or what do you mean by being
I actually
pilgrim?
address that in the episode. I say, if that's what you're thinking, no, don't think of the first Thanksgiving. But pilgrims, that we're all on a journey through this life, that this isn't our permanent home, that we long for more, that heaven is our home, that we're not tourists just here to be kind of standing and watching and being entertained, that we're here to just journey through life to our heavenly home, which is in heaven. So just kind of beginning with that idea of the pilgrim, and what do we need? We need the sacraments that will feed us and that will nourish us, and who is going with us? All of us here on earth, and those in heaven, and the saints are praying for us, and they're all along the way with us. And that pilgrims may look different to other people. You know, if we're living our faith, if we're living the truths that we believe, that we look different, that people should notice there's a difference about the way we live our life. So then that's kind of the first episode. And then it's kind of fun, you know, places matter, you know, history matters. And so we have...
Well, first of all, what are some of the pilgrimages that you describe?
Well, and I split it up into 3 different areas. So one is the world pilgrimages. So we begin, we go to Rwanda, where Our Lady appeared in Kabiho. Okay. So we pilgrimage there, and I tell the children about the story of Our Lady's appearance. And we go to Assisi, and then we go to Rome, of course. And that's where we end up, in Rome. And so all these places just around the world that, you know, that part of that reason, too, for world pilgrimages is so that kids can see that, you know, they practice the faith here at their home, but yet all around the world, everybody, you know, we're a universal church. So they can feel at home wherever they go. If they go to a church into Rome, you know, they might celebrate the Mass in Italian, but they'll the Mass, it'll be Jesus, it'll be communion. So we're at home everywhere in the whole world. Sure. So, and then there's different episodes where I highlight places here in the United States to go. So like Our Lady of Guadalupe.
That's not quite in the United States.
Not quite in the United States. I think I say the Americas. Yes. I cover it all. The Americas. So we go to Our Lady of Guadalupe.
And that's down in Mexico City.
Down in Mexico City, yes. So, and then St. Patrick's Cathedral. And we visit. Then we talk about Pierre Toussaint and some of these great, you know, saints that we just have locally in our own country. So it just kind of gives, you know, that there's so much to do with our faith that we can experience it in many different places.
Yeah, so. Great. And Sister, you were doing your recording today.
Yes,
Father. So you're probably a little tired, but what were you trying to communicate? What's the topic that you're dealing with?
I have a particular love for music and how effective that is in teaching children, that especially the children I've taught younger, even middle school and high school. So I took the Marian antiphons and I translate them and just go through each verse.
By Marian antiphon, what are you talking about? Because a lot of people don't know what that is.
No, very good. I do explain that. In my first episode, I talk about how an antiphon, I talk about the divine office first, the prayers that priests and religious pray every day. And I talk about how there's psalms that you say at different hours of the day. Mm-hmm. And before each psalm is an antiphon, which usually prepares you for what is going to be prayed in the psalm. So then after having described that and saying how there's different liturgical seasons of Easter, Christmas, ordinary time, and then I go through the 4. Lent, yes. And Our Lady only has 4, so she's put, you know, they're put into double. Some of them have 2 seasons, and going through the actual words of the antiphons, they're so rich with meaning because they describe the virtues of Our Lady and how you can pull from that and talk about how much she brings us to Christ and just her Marian role in our lives. And it's all through the hymn. And then at the end, the Truth in the Heart Choir, which is all the sisters, they get to sing the hymn. So it's really kind of neat. So it kind of brings them right up to the point where they could sing it.
Do you sing it in Latin or in English?
This time, last year I had done my hymns all in English. Mm-hmm. And this time I chose to do them in Latin with the translations going to be showing so that the child could be reading what we're singing. And last year I actually did the format of teaching a verse. There were Eucharistic hymns. and I taught a verse in the episode so that the child would actually learn it. So there's this back and forth between the child viewing and the Truth in the Heart choir.
Okay.
But this year it was a little bit easier to do more catechesis with the words of the hymn, and then at the end wrap it up with us singing the Gregorian chant. Because to teach Gregorian chant in 30 minutes would be a little bit much.
Yes, that's not easy. But it's, God willing, they'll get them started to want to learn at some point from someone.
And the nice thing is, if you get the episode, you could keep rewinding it and actually learn it yourself.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So it works.
And I thought I was the son of a used car salesman.
No.
Now, in terms of, people know some of these antiphons, at least a couple of them are very well known. The Salve Regina.
Correct.
That's the Hail Holy
common.
Queen. Yeah, that's very common. And the other one would be...
the Ave Regina Caelorum is the least commonly known. There's also the Regina Caeli, which means Queen of Heaven, and that's done only at Easter, which we pray usually as a prayer too.
Right.
And then Alma Redemptoris Mater, which actually I didn't even know much about. In fact, we learned the song the night before we taped. So it was great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And there's some wonderful settings for all these. There's different settings to these hymns because they've inspired so many wonderful composers to set these in new ways.
Yes.
So it's just very, very cool.
I kind of bring that up in one of the episodes because the words are actually over 1,700 years old. And to say if you had written a hymn now, it'd be 3,700 that they'd still be singing it.
Yes.
And that's how rich these words are, that they still are singing them.
Yes.
And that's almost, in a sense, that's why you want to learn them yourself.
Exactly.
So you can, your mind is made more beautiful by the words of the hymn.
And there are probably hymns that'll keep on going. Now, this is a couple things. Why did you choose, and any one of you can answer this, but what needs do you sense among children that you would choose these kinds of topics? And why do we need to deal with some of that? Anyone of you?
I think, it's kind of the same the world over. There's just a hunger for truth. And there's such a lack. There's a culture that's so contrary to the faith. And there's such a need for just giving them the basics, making the faith come alive for them, and letting them see the connection between the truths of the faith and reality, and realizing this has to do with reality. These ancient traditions of the past aren't just traditions, but they're ways of answering the questions of your heart. And so coming back to the sacraments, to prayer, to Our Lady, the life of Christ, to the church, all of that is so essential to the hunger that's within the human heart for how do we answer life's problems? How do we answer a culture which is so contrary to everything we know? And those very simple things that have always been part of it give an answer, give meaning to our life. And so even though it may seem like the topics are very simple in some ways, it's that simple truth that we so hunger for.
Yeah.
I think also a lot of the things that we do too is try to show the richness of the faith. That the truth, it just isn't this stagnant doctrine, that there's a great richness, a great beauty. And so attracting them, and sometimes I feel like I'm just like moving through some of the information very quickly, but I also am hoping that I'll put the tools in the hands of the kids so that, oh yes, I remember this. I've heard, they go to Mass and they're like, oh, I heard that hymn. I heard that's the hymn Sister taught us. Or they, might be listening to a history lesson in any school and be like, oh, Pius XII. Oh, I remember, he came up and I remember Sister said something about him, so I'm going to look that up. So the richness and the beauty, and that all this can be a way to convey the truth, and they can interact.
Yeah.
One thing too in all of our shows, and it's interesting because we're all very different styles of teaching, but we all really emphasize the lives of the saints, and every sister constantly comes back to the saint stories. And I think there's such a need in our culture for witnesses, for people who witness to us of how you live the faith in your everyday life. And so that's a common theme and a common need in society of presenting those heroes, presenting those witnesses, presenting the people you can look up to who've been there, who've done it, who've had the answers, and who are successful and happy and joyful and in union with Christ.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I was interested in your series, Sister, which deals with the pilgrimages and history. We have a lot of nonsense history
Yes.
out there, especially about the Catholic Church.
Yes.
There are, what are you doing to try to counteract that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point. I think with history is, how do you find out who you are? Well, you know, when you're growing up in a family, your parents tell you stories, and they tell you stories about when you're little, and they tell you stories about your family background. And that's no different for the family of God, is that we need to know our family history as well, to know who we are as Christians. And we have, again, such a rich family history that we can see God's providence moving all through time, and to look back and to see that we stand on the shoulders of giants. You know, that that we're not alone, and they face the same, you know, maybe cultural problems that we think are unique today. We can look back and we can learn from them. So I think a problem is people want to rewrite history, and we have to be very careful as Catholics to know our history and to know our family story, and not to be told, well, this is what, for example, Pius XII did, and we need to know, no, this is what Pius XII did. He saved Jews. He was a hero to many of the Jewish people in World War II.
The state of Israel, honored him very profusely because he saved, between 600,000 and 800,000 Jews. God bless him for that. So this was, and again, you hear all this nonsense history.
Yes.
And you hear it so often, that it becomes, like Hitler said, the big lie.
Yes.
You tell the big lie, and it'll be believed more than a little lie.
Yes, and we need to be able to articulate these stories of our heroes of our past, and whether it's the far past or just even the recent past, and to be able to say, no, they lived their faith faithfully, and that they don't rewrite our history. We need to claim our history
and this is true not only for us as Catholics, but also for us as citizens. The attempts to rewrite history. I just had a man on the radio today who was saying, well, don't you think that there's a weakness in Catholicism because, Catholicism isn't very democratic and so on. And I said, wait a minute. What was the first colony to allow freedom of religion? It was the Catholic colony of Maryland. And he didn't realize that.
Yes.
And we need to let people know, and that it was in fact the Protestant Puritans who came in there and took away religious freedom for Catholics and everybody else. So these things have to be known.
Yes.
Sister, with you, in terms of these Marian hymns, why do you think children need to know this? I know they are written in Latin, and why do you teach that, and what connection between that and the liturgical year are you trying to make?
I think what is most beautiful about music, especially Gregorian chant, because of its ancient richness and tradition, is it brings with it so much more than just notes and words, because it's been delicately put together so that certain words are accentuated. And especially, I know in teaching elementary children, they actually love to learn things in a different language because it's new and fascinating to them. So actually learning in Latin is very simple because sounds are so real to them, and they're sponges taking in the sounds. So I find that the hymns, they stick. So even 20 years later, they can actually sing the Tantum Ergo, or they could sing the Te Deum, they could, because they learned it in Latin. And in that sense, it's a teaching tool that's extremely effective in memorization.
Yes.
So that's why I love to work through hymns, whether it's English or Latin. Latin I like to bring in so that they're not afraid of it. I find in teaching children lately, like in the schools, I taught the whole school, this new school we had started teaching in the Tantum Ergo. And it was the parents that were the ones having the issue. They're like, you're teaching all this Latin. I'm like, it was one song. It wasn't even like the mass parts. It wasn't anything. It was just one song. But the children were like, they'd be in their lockers, opening up their lockers, singing the, Te Deum, and you'd be like, or Tantum Ergo. And I just thought, this is amazing. And they don't know exactly every word.
Yeah.
But they do learn slowly that Sanctus means holy, and they learn all these words, and then they hear them in the Mass, and it all starts to tie together. So it's almost like music is the thread.
Sure.
And the fabric is the doctrine. So it's a really beautiful tool if you can use it effectively. So that's why I've been doing more of the hymn end of things for the sisters and the shows.
And one of the things about our faith is that time is important,
Yes.
and that these liturgical seasons are very key. So this is an interesting way to get a flavor for time by the hymns that belong to certain times of the year, not to others.
And in the episodes, I encourage the students as they're watching your children to actually learn these because they're short. Other than the Salve Regina is a little longer, but the other ones are very short, to sing them with their family during those seasons, because in a sense it'll bring color to the seasons every year. So they're not just saying the same prayers every night. They actually are in Advent, so they sing the Advent antiphon.
Right.
Yeah.
And you, sister, you have anything that you wanted to add on in terms of what you're doing with prayer?
Well, just that, it's such a unique opportunity to be able to do it on international television.
Sure.
Because, when you're in the classroom, you have that opportunity of, the children are in front of you, you're praying with them, you're taking them to the chapel. But to have that opportunity to reach those children who might not get you in the classroom, who might not have sisters, and to be able to speak to them and to share with them what you love is such a gift.
Yes.
So I'm so grateful to EWTN for giving us that opportunity to reach millions who we would never be able to touch otherwise.
Exactly. And there's a great, I certainly found a great interaction between being in the classroom and being in the studio. The classroom, you learn what you want to say.
Yes.
That's a great learning experience. But then you can bring that experience and see what helped students, what didn't, and offer that here on the studio. And that's kind of a nice balance.
Yes.
Yeah. Plus, you're keeping right in the tradition of Saint, that just slipped my mind, who did the great series of sermons in North Africa in Carthage. Cyprian, Saint Cyprian, who did the, I was thinking Cyril, but it was Cyprian, who did that long explanation of the Lord's Prayer, going through it word by word, part by part, and seeing that there's a rich theology in all this. That's another great advantage.
Yes. And there's so much. You look at the prayer and it seems very simple, but as you start to write your lessons or go through it, you start to realize, wow, I never thought about this, and trying to figure out, how do I present this in a way that's engaging to a 9-year-old? How do I make these stories come alive? How do I make this doctrine, which is huge, become little for them, and yet still be huge? It's quite a challenge and quite a gift at the same time. And we learn as much writing the shows, I think, as the kids do.
Sure.
Perhaps learning from them.
That's one of the things that makes teaching so much fun.
Yes.
Would there be one or other particular phrase of the Lord's Prayer that especially, gives you enthusiasm?
I think just the words, Our Father, really, I spent a long time just meditating on them. And you're going to laugh at one of the things that really struck me as I was thinking about, as a kid, when you'd get in trouble, your parents would always do first, middle, last name. So it was the whole name. And then what was so important about a name? And it was if when you were in trouble, they want to remind you, this is who you are. This is who you're supposed to be. And clearly you've forgotten it because you're not behaving the way you normally would. And so they say your whole name. And just thinking about that in terms of, in the Old Testament, what name was revealed to us? I am. But we come to Christ, and he reveals to us that God is Father. And what's in that name? Not only does it tell us about God, but also realizing it reveals to me who I am, that I am God's child, that I have this relationship and friendship, and just thinking about that, that I, who mess up all the time and have tons of mistakes, can call God Father. It's incredible to think about that. And so really, that's the one thing that I keep coming back to over the show, is how amazing it is that God looks on me as his child and he is my Father.
Do you ever have a sense of God the Father using your first, middle, and last name to bring you onto the carpet?
Oh, yes.
Sister, how about you in terms of some of the things that you particularly like about the pilgrimages and the history? What aspects or what specific content that sort of catches your imagination?
I think there is something that I end with in one of the last episodes is that Our Lady of Kibeho asked the children, she said, if you can't come to Kibeho in Rwanda, then please make a pilgrimage of the heart. And so, and that's a beautiful thought, that we're making this pilgrimage of the heart, that we're becoming pilgrims, that we're opening ourselves up to our goal, which is heaven. And so kind of at the end, we talk about that if they can't go traveling anywhere, which little kids can't, but they can dream about it, a big dream for now, and some of them will have those opportunities with their family. But I end with like local pilgrimages that they can just do in their area, just going to their local cathedral, going to their own parish and really looking at their parish. Why is this statue there? Why was this art picked? If they have an old church, who built this church in the first place? You know, who were my grandparents a part of this church? Are there any archives in our church? Going to cemeteries and seeing Catholic cemeteries and praying for the dead and making a pilgrimage there, and seeing some of the historical even tombstones of really that are people who have gone before us, and making that type of a pilgrimage. And even pilgrimages to making shrines in their own backyard. So really seeing that they're on their way, that they can make their prayers, they can take their intentions, and that in all these places that they may go, whether there's their local church or if they go to St. Peter's in Rome, no matter what, Jesus is present in the tabernacle, and they can always go to him and take their petitions to him.
One of these days, we're going to have to get you to include the Holy Land.
Oh, yes, the Holy Land is in the World one.
Oh.
Yes. We start off there.
Oh, thanks be to God.
Yes. We start off there.
Sure, the Pope is good,
yes.
but you know.
Yeah, we go to the Holy Land.
Our Lord's birth,
yes.
his death, these things are pretty important.
Yes, we go there.
All right. Well, we have to take a break. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We want to get some of the questions you might have for the sisters, as well as questions from our studio audience, so please stay with us. Thank you and welcome. We have a really nice audience here, a nice group of folks that came from Cincinnati and northern Kentucky, as well as a number of individuals from different parts of the country. And we'd love to have you come and join us. You can get up a busload of people to come, or come with your families or as individuals. You're more than welcome. You can call our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966, 205-271-2966, or go to our website, www.ewtn.com. They'll give you all kind of information about schedule for getting up to Mass here at the network, also in Hansville. This group from Cincinnati and northern Kentucky, y'all got to go to Mass in Hansville, right? Yes. How'd you like it? Wonderful. Isn't that nice? That really is nice. So, you know, it's a beautiful place up there. They're staying up that way. And it'd be great to have you come and visit us, be in the TV shows as well. Are y'all ready for some questions?
Yes, Father.
Let's get it up. We have Cecilia calling in. Hello, Cecilia.
Hello, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
Ohio.
Great. And what is your question?
I teach CCD, and I have kindergartners. And what I was wondering is, how can I keep them interested? I really hunger to teach them about Christ, to get them on fire, because when I was in the second grade, that set me on fire, was the sisters who told me about the Eucharist.
Uh-huh. Do you have some ideas?
Actually, yes. I teach first grade, which is just a little bit older, but...
Younger, I mean. She was teaching second grade, right?
Kindergarten, I thought.
Oh, kindergarten, okay, so you got first grade.
Anyway, but what I found was interesting is this year I'd done something different than I had done before, and I had taken the symbols like Sacred Heart, Immaculate Heart, J for Joseph, fleur-de-lis for the Trinity, all these different, and I did about 80 different symbols throughout the whole year, and then taught all this catechesis and doctrine through the symbols. And it was interesting because then I brought the little first graders into church a few times a week because we were right next to a parish, and they would just light up, and they'd see Key Row up on the lectionary, or they'd see IHS on the altar linens, and they'd be like, sister, 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 and they would...
There it is.
Yeah, and it was interesting because all this, and then they would tell me what it was and what it meant, and they had no idea they were learning the foundation of what you need to know to then go into the sacraments and further. So it was God's gift that I thought to teach it that way this year, and how well that worked with the little ones.
Oh, that's great. Any other suggestions?
I was thinking too, one thing that caller said that was really beautiful was she had this hunger to teach the faith. And when you love something, kids pick up on what you love.
Yes.
And just the fact that you're excited about it conveys so much to them. And so even though you might have that, hesitation of, well, how do I do it? Just communicate to them, I love the Eucharist, and here's who the Eucharist is. And, take them into the chapel or give them those opportunities to see what you love. And that in itself is probably one of the most powerful teaching tools you have, is the fact that you love the faith and want to share it with them.
And that's one of the things that you're both talking about, is that there's a sense of love of discovery.
Yes.
Some of the TV shows on other channels, Dora the Explorer, and she's exploring, and kids want to explore. Mm-hmm. And there was another one of Carmen, somebody that was, traveling around the world. Where in the world are you? And kids want to discover, well, where is she? And they learn about that country. Mm-hmm. These are the kind of things where you introduce them to discovery, and then that's in the real world. It's not just here in the classroom. It's out there. It's like, oh boy, they really get excited.
Yes.
So that's a cool thing to do. Did you have anything to add?
Well, I think of always being able to tell the saint stories or tell the scripture stories, read the scriptures to them and then tell the story. And so I think any type of storytelling that you can do, and not always just reading them the story, but really like just becoming in some ways a storyteller, and reviewing the story for yourself, putting them in the shoes of Jacinta as a little girl when Our Lady appeared to her, and Lucia and Francisco and Fatima, and introducing them to these stories to expand their imaginations.
Sure. All right. We have a question from our studio audience. Yes. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from Miami, Florida.
Great. And what is your question?
Well, thank you, Father Mitch, and I would like to thank you, sisters. It's sisters like you and yourself that have instilled the faith within me. My question is that losing so many Catholic schools in the nation, how do we as a people evangelize? Well, it seems we've lost a whole generation who are now raising their children and don't see a need to send their children to Catholic school. And even such Catholics who go to church who believe that CD class would suffice. I myself have 2 grandchildren who aren't going to go to Catholic school. And I don't say much because I know I would offend my son and my daughter-in-law, but it really hurts because I know how important instilling in children the Catholic faith is. And it's just frightening. And I would just like to know how we could, again, create a desire in the hearts of our children, our grandchildren, this love and desire to know more of God. Thank you.
I like how Sister earlier had said that it's that what it comes from you. In a sense, the parents are the first educators, and they bring about and instill into children their first loves, whether it's for things or money or God. But that idea that if whether you're a grandparent, whether you're aunt or uncle, if you have this great love for the Catholic faith and you slowly teach them stories when you can, never forcing it too much, but in the sense of bringing about situations that the children can then take in what you love so much, and it will stick whether they show it or not.
But any other suggestions?
I was thinking too, it's not just a crisis of not realizing the importance of a Catholic education, it's a crisis of the importance of the faith, that the Catholic faith in our culture is so necessary. And so to me, the bigger challenge is how do we get the world to see what the church has to offer? And in some respects, it's starting small, but yet thinking big at the same time. So recognizing that we have answers to the hunger of the world, that the world's seeking for meaning, that you talked about that search for discovery. Well, think about what's on our television networks, all your reality shows, all your all of those things that people are out there looking for an answer, and not being afraid to make boldly known we have answers, and not just that we have answers, but they're rational, and that they can be explained and articulated and defended. And when you can get that across to people, I think especially teaching in high school, when I can get 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds to see that the faith makes sense, that the faith has something to do with their everyday lives, that it gives their lives meanings, that it's more than the momentary pleasure, that they're looking for this eternal satisfaction, and that they can find that within the church. They respond to that. And so I think part of our challenge is going into the culture and saying we have something to offer the culture, and not being afraid, and wherever we're at, in our workplaces, in our homes, in our families, to be bold about making known, look at the answers that we have. Yeah. This makes sense to the hunger of the world. This makes sense to the problems we're seeing around us. Here is an answer, and presenting it.
And one of the things of the crisis he mentions that's important is you have people like the professional atheist Richard Dawkins, who writes that one of the things he wants to stop is the teaching of religion to children. He really wants to stop that. And we see that, well, that sounds what businesses that of his, what we do, but in fact, is that not the case in the public schools? That they're not permitted to teach much or mention much about religion at all. And so, whereas when I went to public school back in the 1950s, we said the Our Father every day, we had a little Bible, we sang Negro spirituals. That was, we lived down in Florida, and so spirituals were part of things. You have to be more cautious about that if you could do it at all. And that makes it more important to be teaching children when there are forces outside the church who are trying to stop it. And so I say, let's do it all the more. Let's go to another question. We have a young man here. Where are you from, sir?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, Ohio. And what is your question?
My question is, what's the minimum and maximum age of a nun?
So what's the minimum age they can become a nun?
Yeah.
And then what's the maximum age?
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Well, there are those limits, are there not?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, you're in charge of the postulants,
Yes, I know. In our community, it can vary a little bit by community on kind of the age range of entrance. But our community, we accept young women to enter right after high school. Okay. And usually there's a variety within a group that enters from high school to after college. Usually we kind of look to around 30 to being the oldest that we accept in our community. That can vary by community again. Mm-hmm. But how old can a nun be? Well, hopefully it will last to a long life. So, yes.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if you realize this, but nuns have the greatest longevity of any group in our culture.
Yes. Wow.
Behind them are single women who are not nuns. Then comes married women. And then comes married men. And single men are among the shortest. Okay? Wow. And what does that prove? Men need women a lot more than they need us. Women lengthen our lives and we shorten yours. Let's go to a call. We have Marian on the line. Hello, Marian.
Hi, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
I live in Connecticut.
Great. And what is your question?
Actually, it's a comment. And I tuned in just when you were talking about Latin. And it brought to my mind that Latin with children intrinsically carries a sort of a subtext to them, that there is something hidden and mysterious there. And I think that's a great value of using Latin with children.
Oh, had you thought of that?
Yes. I mean, as in...
Good, because I hadn't.
Well, at least when you teach it to the little ones, it
Sure.
comes across.
Yeah.
Because they're all like, oh, this is like... Yeah. They get very excited because the words are somehow to them even more special than just saying the vernacular.
Sure. Yeah, that was, if a little kid knows something that adults don't know, they just love that.
Yes.
You let them in on a secret, and I know some of you don't. They just cherish that.
It's fun when they go home, Father, and they sing these hymns to their parents, and their parents are like, well, what are you singing? And they're like, well, you'll have to come and find out. Like, so.
Oh, that's pretty good. Well, let's go to another studio question. Sir, where are you from?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Great, good. That's one of my favorite cities. Sisters, you got to go there. One of the best things about the city of Cincinnati is the ice cream.
Oh, yes.
These folks know that, right?
Graders, yeah.
And Graders ice cream is so good, I've submitted their name to cater it for the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. So at any rate, what is your question?
I teach high school math, and I've always been interested in different ways of memorizing things. And I was wondering if you would encourage using Gregorian chant to memorize various high school subjects.
Gregorian chant or would any other... Well, go ahead, answer.
I'm wondering how you would implement it as far as the rhythm and the meter, or...
We have a Greek teacher at our school who uses different tunes to teach Greek. And I don't think he uses Gregorian chant, but he might want to use Gregorian chant maybe.
That's interesting.
It's a thought. I mean, you could take, I guess, concepts or definitions and sing them. I know of other programs that aren't Gregorian chant that you would sing to...
Such as?
One, well, it sounds kind of funny, but what is it, Schoolhouse Rock? And they teach you the multiplication tables and different things. But I know in high school that I'm more of an elementary teacher, but high school, I think anything you put to music is still an extremely good tool.
Yes.
Whether it's music, whether it's religious topics or math topics.
Yeah.
The creativity of doing it, though, you'd have to take the time to meter it and everything.
Something that's kind of neat in high school, if you can get, particularly high school boys, if you can get them comfortable singing, there's so much self-confidence that comes with that they're comfortable with their voices. And so it's not just what happens musically also affects them even as persons and their ability to have that confidence of, I can use my voice in all different ways. And that's important in education, is giving kids that courage of standing up for truth, whether it be in a musical setting or in the other.
Well, it's one of the things, too, that strikes me about our culture. When I was growing up, it was much more common for groups of folks to know songs and sing them together.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was, back in the 50s and 60s, we had the Mitch Miller Show, where they would put the words on the television screen, and a ball would bounce to let you know where it is, and you could sing these old-time songs. Well, to me, they seemed old-time. But then they also had hootenanny shows where you and folk music programs where you could sing along. Mm-hmm. And I don't sense that many of the modern people sing together as much, except in church. Mm-hmm. This seems to be the last place.
Yes, and usually not too much sometimes.
Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, so it's an important thing for us to encourage. I used to translate the Beatles songs into Latin. That was a way for me to learn my vocabulary and sing and remember.
Wow.
We have another caller. Dr. Alice?
Yes, Father, I cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying the show.
Oh,
it seems to me the work as sisters are doing is one of the most important ones, not only because they teach authentic Catholicism, but because they make the children aware of what I would like to call, following Plato, the golden court of tradition. Young people today are totally uprooted and not conscious of the greatness of their past, And for example, the Gregorian chant brings us centuries and centuries back and links us to the past. And when I'm absent-minded in church or distracted or worried, and then I hear the Gregorian chant, I think this is what St. Francis of Assisi heard, and St. Francis of Sales, and St. Teresa of Avila, and it's for me such a help. And I would like to remind Sister Benedicta that I carried her in my arms when she was a baby.
Is that true?
It is. She's my god-grandmother. She's the godmother of both of my parents. They're both converts to the faith.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty good. So she's seen you grow up.
Yes, and actually, Alice von Hildebrand recommended the community to me when I was searching. Right? So it's through her counsel and advice that I found the sisters.
Oh, that's great. Oh, good job, Dr. Alice.
Yes, thanks for your prayers.
And not dropping.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the so this is something too about teaching something like Gregorian chant that is, getting them in contact with history, not as a set of dates, but something that comes out of the history that they can participate in as well. Mm-hmm. And that's what we call tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Father. There's so much richness there. And the stories, which if you watch the episodes behind the hymns, even the sisters, I got so excited the other night. I was going over my scripts and I went over the stories of how, like, St. Gregor the Great is processing down the streets of Rome and people are dying from the plague left and right. And as he's processing, holding a beautiful picture of Our Lady drawn by St. Luke, he hears the angels above him singing the Regina Caeli. And then he adds the last line, Queen of Heaven, pray for us, Alleluia. And then he sees this angel above Castel Gandolfo. And he sheathes his sword and the plague ends. So like even that story alone in that one antiphon, and when you teach that to the children, that's what they remember. And then they're like, wow, we got these really neat songs that come from angels with swords. And, there's so much there.
Father, I have to tell you a cute story. I taught junior and senior humanities this year, and we were covering the period of the Reformation up to modern times. And while we were doing Martin Luther, two of my senior guys were lifeguards at the local water park. And they came into class and they were like, Sister, we were having an argument while we were on lifeguard duty, and we were trying to figure out how could the church have responded differently to Martin Luther? And like you hear these big 18-year-old guys arguing over how could we have helped Martin Luther see the truth differently? How could we have presented it? And I thought, what an opportunity to get our young people thinking about, here's history, here's what occurred, how could it have been different? How could we have avoided the mistakes of the past? What is it that we can bring to that culture? And I think that's part of the beauty of teaching our young people the past, is because they see the strengths and the weaknesses and they start to apply it to the present.
And it sounds as if it also evokes from them ideas, what could I do that would have been different then, and maybe in my own world too? How can I think differently about how to deal with the problems of our world? Mm-hmm. So that's a great benefit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one question I was thinking about with all this, Sister, do you teach the children any great pilgrimage hymns?
I don't. I didn't think about that. Yes, I
probably
could have included that.
Well, I think you've got a good idea going here.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Because that was, when you're walking across Europe, you got to do something. They didn't have radios, to listen to in the car. So, they sang. Yes. And so I'm sure that there's some great pilgrimage hymns. Yes. I know in Jerusalem, at the Holy Sepulchre, there are pilgrimages inside the sepulchre where there are hymns about the cross and about the resurrection, and these are just great hymns. So I'll get you some of those.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. I just happen to have.
I can have you on my show so that you can sing them.
That's not something you really want. I think you're going to want to go back to your own choir. That'd be much, much better. Much better. I assure you. Now, in terms of what parents can do, because one of the other things that we said is how important it is for you to be enthusiastic. Obviously, you are. You enjoy this stuff, and you get excited about these stories, even talking amongst yourselves in here. And you talk about how the kids get excited. What do we do to get the parents also involved and have them excited so that teaching the faith is not going to be in a half-hour show at EWTN, nor just catechism once a week, but it permeates every day at home.
I think one of the questions was that there's a group of adults that have not been catechized well, and that's kind of your question, is like they don't see the importance of Catholic education because maybe they didn't receive that great of a Catholic education. And I think through one thing is getting the kids excited, but that also does get their parents excited as well, because they see the kids getting excited and they think, well, why are they so excited about this, and what do I need to learn? And I think as educators, in some ways, enticing the adults to learn and not to assume that they know all the stories, to in some ways assume that they don't know the stories, and to start with some of the simple stories, some of the stories that illustrate the great truths of the faith, that are engaging, that in some ways are adventuresome even, and to show that Catholicism isn't about rules, it's not about just morality, that those things, that the doctrine influences how we act, but there's great beauty and there's to our faith. And I think beauty is something that is a great vehicle for teaching the doctrine, but to expose people to the beauty, because they don't know what they're living without in many ways.
One of the things that strikes me for parents is that when the children do show this excitement, you can blow it off and say, oh, that's nice what the sisters taught you, or you can become involved in trying to figure out more about it yourself and learn and use this as a way, well, let's study this together.
Yes.
Not just, oh, let the sisters do it. That was one of the problems of education in the past. The sisters will do it all.
And we're there to help the parents.
Exactly.
And we're there to help the parents.
Exactly.
One of the things we're constantly striving to do is to give the families opportunities to be involved. So, for example, we'll have Eucharistic processions, and it'll go out on the Monday mailers or whatever, whatever your mode of communication is. We're having a Eucharistic procession, and the children are singing, and there's going to be incense and the altar service carrying the canopy. Come and be a part of that. Or we're having a Marian procession. We're having an all-school rosary. We're having all of those opportunities for the faith, and we're having daily mass or whatever it is, inviting the parents to be there, and really as a teacher thinking, how can I get the parents involved? And those opportunities, they're manifold, and using that, realizing this is an opportunity to catechize them as well. When I invite mom and dad to help drive the children to pro-life witness, mom and dad are learning, oh, here's how I do pro-life witness with my young people. So that constant, it's a lot of work, but that constant communication with the parents of here's what's going on in the classroom, here's what we're doing, please be a part of it, is key.
Yeah. It's important not to separate home and school.
Yes.
It has to be a team. We can't educate your children without you educating them at home. And it makes our job easier too at the school when you're teaching them the faith at home and you're living the faith particularly at home. And living the faith is what the challenge is often. And but we're here to support parents in teaching their children.
Yes. I do recall having gone just a few weeks ago to Atlanta for the Eucharistic Congress. Had 25,000 people.
Wow.
And it started off with a Eucharistic procession that went, and adoration that went on for an hour and a half. But then there was education for everybody at all levels, and in multiple languages. Vietnamese, Korean, Spanish, English, of course, and all these other different groups. And that was really a very cool way, so that everybody's getting educated together in different groups, and yet we're in this together. And that was a nice way to get that going.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a good thing. I want to let people know that you are the Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist. And this is a branch office of the Dominicans, your Dominican Sisters. Mm-hmm. And, a growing group. It's just marvelous the way your community is growing. I oftentimes let people know that, communities like yours and some others are just doing so well. And that gives so much encouragement. But you can also check them out by going to www.sistersofmary.org. Sistersofmary.org. And of course, stay tuned for the series that you've done on Truth in the Heart. So thank you all for being here and coming to do another series. And I want to give all of you a blessing. May Almighty God bless all of you. May He show His face to you and give you His kindness. May God direct you to learn the faith and to teach it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And I just want to remind you all, this network is brought to you by you. The sisters can come and do these shows because you make it possible. And right now, we're down a bit. It's about $750,000 down that we need to make up. So if all of you can give just a little bit, in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, we'll be able to pay up all those bills and get back so that we're on track again. We appreciate your support, and God bless you all. Thank you.